What's up guys, Hardcore Horror Nerd here. Today, I wanted to do something different with my videos. I got the idea to talk about my top 3 directors because one of my biggest life goals is to become a movie director. And if people were to ask me, and if that does happen in my life, and someone was to ask me, who are your inspirations growing up, the 3 I would say are Kevin Smith, John Carpenter, and Quentin Tarantino. So I'm going to make like a 3-part series about each director. Today's video is going to be mostly about, or all about Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith has made movies like Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, Dogma, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, Clerks 2, Zack and Miri, Red State. I know he's also made Jersey Girl and Cop Out, but I haven't seen those 2 movies. I mostly stuck with his like View-esque universe movies and his Zack and Miri movie, and it took me a while to check out Red State, but after a while, after I kept hearing, it's a good movie, you should check it out, I finally checked it out, and I agree it is a good movie. So let's first talk about Clerks. Now, Clerks is a black and white comedy movie, and it basically is Clerks is the start of the View-esque universe, because you get introduced to Dante and Randall, and you also get introduced to Jay and Silent Bob, and those 4 are kind of the main, or pretty much the main characters of the Clerks series within the View-esque universe, and it's one of my favorite films by him. Lots of funny jokes, really interesting, 90s comedy movie. But my favorite movie by him would have to be Mallrats. And the reason I like Mallrats is because they just make a lot of pop cultural references in it to comic books and to other movies. And it's hilarious. Ben Affleck plays like a douchey character in it. Jason Lee is in it. Jason Lee is always hilarious when he's in Kevin Smith movies. Just for whatever reason, Mallrats has always been my favorite Kevin Smith movie. And I'm really glad I have it in my collection, but I want to upgrade and get all of his movies on Blu-ray as soon as possible, so hopefully I can start working on that soon. My other favorite one by him is Dogma. Now, Dogma is kind of like I guess you could say it's a religious comedy film, and in it Ben Affleck and Matt Damon play an angel, and Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, yeah, they play angels, and Alan Rickman plays an angel, Chris Rock's in it, George Carlin's in it, Alanis Morissette plays Jesus in it, and I want to say Dogma was supposed to be the last of the View-esque universe, because at the end of the credits, Alanis Morissette, who like I said plays Jesus, comes up to this giant book and closes it, and on the title page of the book it says View-esque universe. So I think that was supposed to be the last one, and then Kevin Smith's most popular characters, Jay and Silent Bob, people wanted to see them in their own movie, so he came back and made Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back to add to the View-esque universe. And it's just a hilarious movie all around. There's nothing wrong with that movie. It's perfectly funny, perfect amount of comedy, or amount of like stupid comedy that one can take. My least favorite by him would have to be Chasing Amy. I just thought it was really weak, and the only part I like about that movie is when Silent Bob speaks and tells the story about how he's chasing Amy. And I do like how in Jay and Silent Bob, I know I'm all over the place, but they all kind of come together. I do like how Jay and Silent Bob reference Chasing Amy in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. There's a line where they're trying to find like this monkey that they had, and Kevin Smith, he plays Silent Bob, so he's being silent about it, and then Jason Mewes is like, come on man, spit it out, you tell that Amy story all the time. So I thought that was pretty funny. Zack and Miri was another one I saw by him, and that's Seth Rogen and Elizabeth Banks, and it's a romantic comedy about 2 roommates who don't have any money, and their electric and water is getting shut off, so they decide to make a porno in order to make money, in order to pay their bills. It it was a pretty funny movie. Lester is who Jason Mewes plays in it, and Lester was probably one of my favorite Jason Mewes characters next to Jay. Um, the reason I say characters is because I know he, outside of the Kevin Smith movies that he's done, the only other role I know him by is Jimmy the janitor on Todd in the Book of Pure Evil. And if you haven't seen that show, it's on Netflix. It's hilarious. They're actually making a movie for it, which I think may be coming out this year. Clerks 2 is a continuation of Clerks 1. All around hilarious movie. I like it a little bit more than I like Clerks, but will still always be up there with a cult classic film. The next movie I saw by him was Red State. Now, Red State actually got a lot of controversy because it's like a religious action horror movie kind of thing. And, people either hated it or loved it. I loved it. It was a really good action-y horror movie. John Goodman's in it. Jason Mewes isn't in this one. I think this is one of the first movies that Jason Mewes wasn't in that was made by Kevin Smith. But for good reason, because I think if Jason Mewes was in it, people would be like, oh, it's Mewes, and it'd kind of be like, say something funny Mewes, when it's supposed to be like a serious, action-y horror movie. And one of my other favorite things that Kevin Smith has done is he did a cameo in Scream 3. It was him as Silent Bob, and it was Jason Mewes as Jay, and he did a cameo in it, and it was like a little 5-second cameo, but that 5 seconds that they were in it, it was really funny to me for some reason, and probably the only redeeming quality of Scream 3, because not to get off topic here, but Scream 3 is the worst of the series in my opinion, and the reason I feel that is because Kevin Williamson, I think is the writer, Kevin Williamson didn't write Scream 3, so it was weak compared to the rest, but that's a whole different story. Maybe I'll do a video about the Scream franchise later. The reason he inspires me so much is because even though he makes a lot of comedies, he still is ballsy enough to venture out and to make movies like Red State, which is, like I said, a horror movie. And he's actually got another horror movie coming out quarter 3 of this year, which I think is the fall of this year, which is called Tusk. And if you haven't heard about it or read anything about it yet, basically Tusk is going to be a walrus horror movie. That's what he describes it as. And to kind of, give you a little synopsis on it without giving away too much that I read about. So the idea came from a podcast that Kevin Smith did. It was Smodcast number 294? 259. Yeah, Smodcast number 259. So if you have a podcast on your phones and stuff like that, check out Smodcast 259 to hear the full story. But basically, Kevin Smith found this story that ended up being a hoax about this guy who's willing to rent out a room on rent-free on one condition, and that's you have to dress up in a walrus costume that he made and act like a walrus for like 2 hours a day while he throws fish at you, and you have to eat it. It sounds really demented and messed up. In the podcast 259 of Smodcast, Kevin Smith basically laid out, here's what I want to do to make this into a movie. And the way he did it, he made it sound like an old-fashioned Hammer horror kind of creature feature movie. And it sounds so like gruesome, but at the same time it sounds really, really, really amazing. So I cannot wait for that to come out. I'm pretty excited about it. Walrus, yes. And then he is actually working on Clerks 3 right now. I think as far as it's gotten is he's written it, and they're waiting to hear back from the Weinstein Company to see if they'll help produce it. And that's another movie I'm really excited to see because it's going to be the end of Clerks of the Clerks series, and possibly the last View-esque universe movie to be made. Because there's rumors out there that saying after he makes Clerks 3, he's going to retire from directing, which will be sad, but I can understand, and I hope he does get Clerks 3 rolling and get it out there, because if it is going to be his last movie, I can see it really pleasing a lot of fans that he goes out with a View-esque universe movie. Just this guy is really amazing to me because he was able to create a whole entire universe of movies, which is the View-esque universe movies, and he's really can do no wrong with his movies. Like, I know they're not always critically like acclaimed and all that, but they're still hilarious on their own, and I don't listen to critics, and I don't think critics really know what they're talking about sometimes. So I just make a judgment for myself. I know I haven't seen Jersey Girl by him or Cop Out by him. They're two movies I want to check out by him. That way I can say I've seen every Kevin Smith movie. But he's just a really awesome, cool guy. He's also on AMC's Comic Book Men every Sunday at midnight. It's really cool to basically see Kevin Smith, my hero, every week, talking about his store, which is featured in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. It's featured as Brody's Comic Shop, but in real life, in Red Bank, New Jersey, it's called Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash. So it's the real store, just with a different name in the movie. And it's really cool to see him every week and talk about, his shop and listen to his employees, which he actually has in 2 of them, I think, maybe more, because it focuses on 4 employees, which are Walt, Brian, Ming, and Mike, and they kind of do like this podcast table during the show, so they talk about what's happening in a podcast form, and then you watch like the transaction that they're talking about happen, and it's really cool to see that. Walt Flanagan was in Mallrats, actually, and Clerks. You'd recognize him in Clerks as the guy who's looking for the perfect carton of eggs, and every time he can find one, he starts smashing it against the wall. And in Mallrats, you'd recognize him as the guy that Brody gets in a fight with in the comic book line to meet Stan Lee. Brian Johnson was also in Mallrats, and he was the guy who was also fighting Brody in Mallrats next to Walt Flanagan. And Kevin Smith helped him make the movie was called Vulgar, and it was a rape revenge horror movie, kind of like, it's the male version of I Spit on Your Grave. I've only read about it and heard about it, and someone on Instagram told me I need to check it out, so I really do want to check that out, actually. He had this small cameo in a movie called Fanboys, and it was pretty hilarious. I think he played himself alongside Jason Mewes, who played himself. If you haven't seen Fanboys, I know this is off topic, but Fanboys is a funny, like, buddy movie about friends who love Star Wars. So check out Fanboys. The next video I'm going to make will be all about Quentin Tarantino, and then I'm going to save the best for last. I'm going to do John Carpenter as my 3rd and final video of this series, because I actually have Assault on Precinct 13 on its way on VHS coming to me, so I want to be able to show that in the video. So really, thank you guys for watching these videos. Thank you for following me on Instagram. Thank you for all the cool comments and the subscriptions and all that. So as always, you can follow me on Instagram at Hardcore Horror Nerd, like Facebook's Horror Affair and Love of Horror. Keep checking up here for the YouTube videos. Comment, rate, subscribe, whatever you want to do. And hail horror.